야. 야, 당황스 거스 봐봐. 최천에 천년이 치바 년경이 년바. 아니 시행에 되게 않지. 가서 지 교론 최단의 최행의 교론 최단 제방이나 최대 최신의 만드는这个 말이었어. 와. 최천년 뭐지면 도서양도 지진된서 준비 공부를 했었는데 다 강시시 지식을 마도 게 시카되게 전화통은 몇번 누우면 게 진다고 말이야. 되게 시카래. 지전은 딱 시카대 더랑이 돼 당가서 뭐쳐도 지어로 지게 되지. 얘는 뭐 거도 이게 돼. 이게 다르시 거사게.
좀 이제 ngay
이게 다르시 거에 말어.
좀 이제 이제 손난다 그지.
네. 당가서 최친의 집에 최친의 재산은 단위 제거로 왔다. 체버스 리체버보다 다 거스버 갖고 그러와. 당에 최신의 가족이 너 공부를 한 제와이나 최친 영모지면 도서양도 지진된세네. 지 장대의 경로스케면은 시지 최대 만원아지 시거서는 아니. 지난 공부를 다 되는 거 봐. 당에 나영이 시가들에게 최론적인 데만 누구들 시고 말이야. 당아로라기 기노 당아서 뭐지 이제 계획이 말이야. 당아 제 차사로 아마도게 최론성 데만 누구들 안다고 말이야.
So at the moment, we are here to listen to the teachings of the Dharma, and me, as a Dharma teacher who is here to teach the Dharma. So according to the Sutra, the Dharma must be taught without influence of any negative thoughts and emotions or negative motivations, or it should be free from deluded state of mind. That is what it should be. And Dharma should be taught in accordance with the followers, accordance to the inclination of the followers and mental disposition and inclination of followers. However, when it comes to me as a spiritual teacher, Dharma teacher, and I normally don't take much of this literally. You know, what I do is I always teach that whatever I know, and I really don't take much time to depend on what the followers' inclination and dispositions. So many of you may know that we have been, together and listening to the teachings, and I'm giving the teachings, and you may have aware of my style of teaching and my way of teaching.
가제 나서 가지 캠콜 인치지기 러도서 코치 맞아는 쉬쉬선 로이데만 손만 진 따그면 러도서 근데 대대만 같이 진 따그면 와지 나가 게주도서 샤는 베제트데 마타니 지제세는 말 공시지는 민도와 다 공시 배진 자서 말에 너무 전에 알아 공시 내 인사래.
So, and I was also told that somebody said who actually participated in receiving the teachings from Rinpoche, from me, in other words. But then the way he teaches is something that doesn't really depend on the followers' inclination and dispositions. At some point, this is pretty true. That is what I do. I whatever I know and whatever that I think is appropriate, and this is what I go ahead and then teach the followers, the practitioners.
야, 다 그래나 처음에 당도 기능나 받아 betone. 니다 거기서 보면 최천이 다는다. 네 대중 아주 자제제. 네 또 투병보다 네 나리 집에 남아나지. ne ko ne che and then ji rani ge den de pe so ne rani ge den je shi so che ne rani la je shi me ma ne de ji de je na ga de na ne me pa de che.
So now here, in order to cultivate a positive motivations, as usual, let's begin with visualizing Buddha Shakyamuni before oneself, surrounded by all these lineage gurus of Lam Rim Chenmo. And so here, imagine that they are not just here automatically, but just imagine that they are actually invited by you. You invoked those great beings before yourself, in front of oneself, in other words. And they too is gazing at you, which very delightfully.
Ne rani ge yan de la ne rangi tu je phama tsu be sa na re ani ji danda nga so de sa ge sa cha de ne zo de ne ji zambe de le de la ne be yin ne bo yon su to ya na rangi mi ri pe na ro pe na ma ami ri ga yin se ma ami ri ya na ge yi pin ja se ne ko kan ji su che se de mi ba che se de be de na ha ne zu zu se ne cha na ya ne ta de se ne ye mi ge cha ko de me ja wa che ne ya na me gi ri ya na su su de se ne ba bo zu ne ne sen jen yon su zo ba ni na de yes and then ji no de yes san shan ne ma bi jin ne cha gu ma ga de san na kan ga ye mi de de wa de ji dong me me de wa yin zan ne kan ga de wa zhu sa la bu zhong ma chen ji ju de yo yin zan ne de wa la ji ngao xian de yo ba kan xie ji la ne de wa zhu me xian ni nyang ta de sen jen de mi ba che ne de yin za de ne de ne ye ne shu bi cuo ji xin san de re zhe yi ye na ma de da yin ne rang la ne lang ma na wa ji de da da dian xin ba de ji yin san ne ji mi ba che na ne tu lo ji bu ji tu do.
So here now, having visualized those great beings, including Lam Rim lineage gurus before oneself, now being oneself in their presence, and oneself is also surrounded by all other sentient beings, including one's own parents, relatives, acquaintances, and in other words, the entire sentient beings. And if entire sentient beings, when visualizing entire sentient beings, is something that is not really, it becomes beyond one's imaginations, then one can think about one's parents, one's loved ones, one's relatives, and one's community, or the one's own kind, the people who are, from one's, in other words, one's own country, the people of one's own country. So this is again for us is more suitable, for our inclinations. So think about that. The important for us to imagining those beings with us is to reflect one's mind upon all those beings are aspire to attain happiness and overcome sufferings, down to the insects such as ants and so forth. All of us have similar wish to achieve happiness and overcome sufferings. And so imagine that the being themselves, being yourself with all of those sentient beings, and in the presence of the great teachers, and receiving the unmistaken path, the teachings of the unmistaken path to the stage of enlightenment.
Da sen jian na jian ngang ci sang ne sen jian la mi bi zhe wa dang yi ji qian bo dang shang chu sen ne ne xu bi jia wa na ji gu song tu jian yin de sang na duan ne de ba qi se de ji de ba de nian ji ni jie wei yi ju no de de ni lo wa de ni jian ne sen ba le cuo ye ba ji jie yin da ga ma ni ci ji.
So here now, cultivating compassion, extending compassion, sense of caring and loving kindness or bodhicitta towards all sentient beings who are including oneself, and also as well as who are in your surrounding, and also cultivate a genuine faith towards the great beings who are in front of yourself by reflecting your mind upon their good qualities. And this is the two kind of visualizations or the practice which actually establishes compassion and as well as irreversible faith towards the great beings. So with this, let's take a couple of minutes to meditate.
다 되게 결혼 쳐봤잖아. 나한테 세버라. 컨센버셔 있잖아요. 다 사손주 주면 니 상조랑제린 바스.
With these motivations, the teachings that we are receiving today is the lamp for three worlds, which is the stages to the path to enlightenment or the Changchu Lam Rimpa.
다 맞속에 사제 코너 좋아동이나. 근데 토마스 손으로잖아. 아니 저런거치 손으로 아니 저런거치 이제 콘도서데 서려서나 아니 배우줄로베 아니 되네 자가지 벤두 아니 되네 템바 투병 볼라 콘도 바레스 근데 라우투고 제바비 쳐와다.
So as to cover the first important outlines, the greatness of the authors given in order to show the teachings has noble source. For that, one should ask the question right from the beginning that who actually taught these teachings, what we call the Lam Rim Chenmo, is actually, the answer to this question must be the Lama Tsongkhapa, who actually taught these teachings. And how this Lama Tsongkhapa, come to realization of such teachings is then dependent, then it goes back to the great Tibetan Pandits and Tibetan translators and masters, which will then be traced back all the way to the Buddha himself. So with this, answering to such questions will, enables one to show the greatness of the authors given in order to show the teachings as noble source.
아니 주샤 가르 손셔여래서나 아니 주부 손저 란치린 바 아니 주부지 토마시네 댄세네 주 사제 사람 만로보다 란치린 바 차송아 지네 니주 제나메기 치초영이 손셔여래 주샤 댄셔여래 손나.
So then what is the title of these teachings? Or what is the subject? What is the the subject matter of this particular teachings? So subject matter of this particular teaching is to teach the stages of the path of the three practitioners or the three three persons, such as great person, small, middling, and the great persons, or in other words, the practitioners. And it actually teaches the stages of the path of three beings, three practitioners, three kinds of practitioners, in other words, and which includes the teachings beginning from the teachings of reliance, the proper reliance on the spiritual teachers, all the way to the state of complete enlightenment. So this is such a very unique teachings, which is taught by great Master Lama Tsongkhapa.
아니 이제 녀석이 가사들 체체 걸어 상고래서나 아니 도마 아니 라지 스제 탄치게 된도 저게 상제지 공부하기 치에도 는 것이 댄스는 좀 멀리 손주기 봐도 체크인 다 생기게 로기 빠빠 영향치다 네 좀 쉬지 뭐 영향치게 아니 라레도 그래 세대 가사랑이 상고에 체체 경로주에서 알아.
So here then, what kind of the practitioners motivation is required to receive such teachings? Here, the motivation required for the followers of these teachings is that I must engage in the practice to attain to practice beginning from a proper reliance upon the spiritual teacher and following the process of all this path until ultimate enlightenment. And this is for the benefit of oneself, and all other sentient beings. And this is the motivations it's required for the disciples or the followers who actually have a keen to receive such teachings.
아니 이제 당한 자이 사지 제발해 자이 사지 제발해 담방 먼저 넘어 제때 저기 좀 봤어요. 네 단지 나와네. 뭐 신이 된지는 좀 몰라서 손주 받아 나와네. 토마 아니 나서 신이 된비지 되는 로지다 신이 좀 봐니 인세데 라메 첨부 자이 두지들. So
then this will then be followed by the three other great important outlines, the sequence in which the disciples are to be taught the actual instructions. This is then be followed by the how to rely on the teacher, which is the root of path, and how to students train their mind after having relied on the teachers. And so, which actually talks about how important it is for us as a followers of the teachings of the Lam Rim Chenmo must have a genuine motivations, to practice starting from how to rely upon a spiritual teacher all the way to the complete enlightenment.
당연 자이스게 사티게 드셔봐. 단에 때는 로치다쟁이 봐라. 니 뒤에는 힘벌는 비시 그거도 힘벌쳤다는 비추니지. 다 동물에서 다 힘벌쳤다는 비추더라니 뒤에는 힘벌쳤다는 비추더라니 인사. 뒤에는 힘벌쳤다는 비추더라니 랑지 나자랑이 받지도 힘벌는 뭐지. 다 동물에서 다 힘벌는 증거들을 송 지구 중간다 두모에 나지를 만양선은 지금제다 두모에 나지를 지구 천빈 나지를 만양선은 수예지 다 동물인 조사 아니 손바 지구 천빈 나지를 만양선은 지라송 대전은 지구 뭐 센지 하나된 거 센지 제다 지구 주 센지는 쇼발로 수예지 다 동물인 조사 다 센지는 쇼발로 지라송 센지는 로발로 로그비 전세 로발레레월로 로베 산제면 루바 덴바 로발로 로베 림바니 시고 아지 다 동물인 조사 다 로발로 로베 림바니 시바달라 니 사요 쇼바절로 로데다 쳬바도 도제테발로 노세지 다 동볼로 송 샹세지 로발로 한대장와 제세 장내 제세지 담바송 손에 제단에 수예지 다 동본인 제사 다 손에 제단에 비치니 간로로 비시 델로바는 비시 델로로 비리 마지 동본인 제사 다 델로로 비리 마달라 니리 쇼바절로 로데다 쳬바도 파세 타만이로 노수예지 다 동벌라니 랑게 산제 주미 바시바 바로 대신바 너지다 진지 주미 바시바 대용어 버죠 너지에지 다 동벌라 주 진발라로 주 주전라로 주 저발라로 주 산데 전리라로 주 산데로 주 시라로 지에지 다 대용어 또 송바 저발라로 지 대마 주티지 아니 샹주지 산제这哪怕中年，你解释就学罢了后边，那也你跑的是吧？后头你越边弄呢，你嘛就跑的是吧？主要弄的送吧，你这边发现了，后这啥节课都讲了。
So having received the Bodhisattva's vows, and one engages in the practice of the Bodhisattva's deeds, engaging in the Bodhisattva's practice. So when it comes to the practice, the Bodhisattva's practice, there are primarily of six primary practices, such as 6 perfections and so on. And out of 6 perfections, we have covered the perfection of generosity and perfection of morality. So we are on the 3rd perfection, the perfection of patience.
我所以解释就学罢了，一动文学罢噻，我所以一动文是的，一往错罢噻的，刚刚可能搞不见的，就差不多一动文加了钱了，刚刚一往错通眼去。但我所以想这个三人我去见呢，解释就学罢了，就眼这个实际的了，那个了就那比高级那个教育呢，啊呢把让外面把一往错通眼去学罢去差过。
So here, Bodhisattva's conduct, or the conduct of the Bodhisattva, which is also known as mind-captivating conducts. So if one has a genuine aspiration to practice Bodhisattva's conduct, then one should have this feeling of mind-captivating feeling towards the conduct of the Bodhisattvas.
对，对，那个他这边我说西边那个这边，但那我说什么这边热的要是呢，你懂不呢？你要把那这么样比如吧，你去了你干啥？东西当然就是吧，去了你生就是吧，那我说懂不？干啥？你把去了当然去谁的？东西当然比如吧，东西当然谁的？过年到门眼可是来吧，就没见到人那我说东西当然谁的？到去的今天你不是给我嘛的吧？ 동해 갔다는 가르쳐 제고 나와야나 아니 매제다 지게 동해 소소 내면서 개체 많이 버체 아니 제한다 최지 내가 뭐지 초비 때문에 근데 전이를 강해 해야 돼 강해 될로 쇼마 샤와체 아니 대 아니 당내제네 아니 가대 자단지로
so the sections of we are on the sections of the divisions of the patients, such as the developing the patients of the disregarding harm done to you, and the developing the patience of accepting sufferings, and developing the patience of the certitude about the teachings. So we are on the developing the patience of accepting sufferings. So here now, as I mentioned during my previous teachings, that when speaking about accepting, developing the patience of accepting suffering, it's not something that you just go somewhere and look for the suffering and you accept that suffering. And you should be yourself in that particular situation of chaos and then accept that suffering. This is not what we were saying. When speaking about accepting suffering, is that when the condition is met, when one is met with such conditions that may bring about suffering to oneself, at that moment, it's as a practitioner, one should know how to handle, how to withstand with that particular situation or that particular problem or the sufferings. That is what is meant by accepting suffering.
Tell Jensen kasi sonsa songa. Donghe tangli pena meni ki zupi ne tang da cha da za da do tang chua da do tang yung jiba jejang le da me logo yong de ye su su ki cha tong na yang de laba de logo lobo le ye. Ni me kashi la yen ye cha tong son rani jemba to jejo ye de yong de semba ki che so re ma do zupi ne tang jiba jejang le wa song do.
So here now, it is the way of thinking which really makes difference. Even though that 2 individuals maybe in the same situations, with the same physical conditions. Whereas one, it says, as we already touched that particular paragraphs during our previous teachings, that someone seeing their own blood becomes more intrepid, whereas others seeing their own blood fall unconscious. But those two individuals, maybe in the same situations, it is due to their way of thinking that one fall unconscious and one become more intrepid.
This is Pedanga Chambo, just as you are like it, Pedon Jabon, so the Mato Cote was Shuijiro, this is the Mato Lane to it. Mato Kanga Carses, so get no dollar for the Titomichi gonna heavy color, tea, Tane, the Chemato, any teller in the drum of Shuiji Tane, any better not a Zoyan war, Jero. Kangasoki, immediate metawaje, Lansan, she never Tangazo Tane, better not over.
So here, if one follows the teachings of the Shantidevas, it's beautifully stated by setting a beautiful examples. Most of the time, we as ordinary beings, we are unable to really to accept that unwanted situations properly. We do not know how to handle that properly. It is because that whenever someone speaks, even a one word, something that is unpleasant towards you will become intense, effective, mentally speaking, to oneself. And with this, then one exaggerates and then and go for more, sufferings by reflecting minds upon whatever the words that has been spoken to oneself. So what it really entails us is because it entails that we are unable to see the faults and those sufferings. We are unable to see the faults and generating anger and so forth.
자체 자로 라니 손적이 된다라 이제는 피게들 카테 자셔 만에 전에 라니 손적이 된다리나 카테 맞아제 당내 전에 근데 르르전에 자네 샴비 원을 되네 컨트롤 라니니까 컨트롤 시지고도 대신에 라니 손샤고도 대매버제 라니 손에 베트 나와제 파카테 자사디 피게가 수가 닌가가 아니 베트 가서 타면 차도로.
So we have a tendency of protecting ourselves by reacting towards someone accordingly. Whoever is, react towards you very badly, and we go about and then do the same thing in a sense of protecting oneself. However, that is a wrong way of protecting ourselves. If we know how to protect ourselves, instead of reacting accordingly what others done to oneself, one should just let go of it. In fact, one should generate love and compassion toward this person, and this will really become a protection for oneself. This will really protect oneself from falling into the same category of that other individual.
당연히다. 다시 이번에 가서 가는 사자 대연 선수 이번에 잡아시봐 생기디. 아니 동해 당내 때라 자이 나시 자이 사지 손는 손바데 니시 이번에 잡아시봐 손들이.
So we are on the the detailed explanation. We are on the chapter, the page 177. Right after the verse by the Bodhisattva's deeds, and then it followed by the detailed explanation from the viewpoint of basis.
다시 이번에 제바시바 네 손도 동해 땅도 내 거나 네 진짜월에 쇼이 동해 땅도 내 Tang de Len Yang Lang Yang Nas de la Jele Sondo. Did draw to the Juju, not to draw the Legro, but
So here now, then it's the question is, it says the question, given that one must accept the suffering that occurs, from where do these sufferings come, and how does one accept them? And replying to that is, there are 8 bases for accepting sufferings.
Quite the low in the Nella Temba Nes, or Tombo della Jele, Nella Temba Nes, Chugo da Senor da Mencha da Tenda Nai Sumenda, Yoshi Dedane, Sanshi Pevi, Nesos, Deda Neba da Nua Nebana, Parabu Magubana, Yurin the Jana, Jane Shimbala, Megawa da Yichiba Meji, Deda Leshun, Donget on the Lemba, oh, it's a Lanetusa.
So then here, reply, there are 8 bases of accepting sufferings. The first, acceptance of suffering that is based on objects, ropes, arms, beatings, seat, medicine, and necessities are objects that enhance pure conduct without displeasure and disappointment. You accept the suffering that arises when these are given to you, and you find them to be inferior or too few, or when they are given with disrespect or after a long delay.
Tell me, Saya da Koyan da de Tendriki Tanda Mel 10 years because Zonza Chache Matson Bicola, Matsuno in a Molici, Nadazo in Monte Zora. You see, you Bicola, don't let you go see, nobody do.
So here now, all of this, the necessities we need, it all depends on others. So with this, for us, we become, displeasure or disappointed for some reasons, whether someone is not given to you appropriately, and someone just given to you but not immediately. It may have taken a long time for you to get this, and so on and so forth. For us as ordinary beings, when this happens, and that becomes a problem for us, right?
Tata Yalan, Dilomba Dinolan, the big Chachen shoot, Zambo in Bicola, the Soletin Bicani, and Melishu, that is so Gueski, Yamani. The tail will be Chachen or Chachen Zaman, the Netan.
So here in the United States, we have more resources. So probably we have less sufferings when it comes to this suffering that we talked about earlier.
Watch it. Then Jitin Chula Temba Nanji, Mane Bada Mene Bada, Me Bada Dongewa dance, Jiba the Seba, Gawa Nawa Chivi, Chujena, Jibana, Jibane, Shoa Te, Gune, Jitenji Chuyila. There Tanchi Rela Tembi, Dongenala, Susotane Tanda Lemba, oh, so.
Then here it says, second, accepting of suffering that is based on worldly concerns. The 9 worldly concerns. First, loss. Second, disgrace. Third, blame. Fourth, pain. Fifth, disintegration. Sixth, extinguishment. And seventh, aging. Eighth, sickness. And the ninth, death of what is subject to death and subsequent to its decay. After you have analyzed the sufferings based on all or each of these, you accept the suffering.
This is what you done. Cheganachi, the Hinge said, Ko Zubineta Korachella, then Yunguremado, she changed Mansamba, then Yosuke Mare. 같이 던져 좀 비고 레신달은 문제 제네 아니 강에도 용 비고나 네 야나 때때때 용 그에 진지려 생기 지 야나 지전들이 지 초발에 되는데 용거를 내가 아니 다시 들을 뭐 조토고 그러세요 이게 벌써 같이 제사나 이용 제시와라 이 강이 좀 자인데 이게 자된지 이제 아니 피gel래 신주 제시 제바 제시 제잖아 샘발로 로다 페이지고 샘발 로고 제지 동해대 치세 제토긴지 거로와
So here, when it comes to like aging, sickness, and death, yes, all this coming into being due to its own causes and conditions, and the suffering of sickness, aging, death, and so forth. It's not something that coming into being from nowhere. It happens with its conditions. So therefore, when one is going through such experience, such as particularly the sickness and so forth, one should seek a method where one can overcome those sicknesses and try to find a skillful means to overcome the sicknesses and so forth. And then when it comes to like such as death and so forth, it's is something that we need to accept ourselves without having a displeasure or disappointment of thinking about reflecting, thinking about the death, the nature of death. One should one should have a fortitude towards acceptance of death, aging, and sickness.
되지 간제제 간제제 최선의 소소이지 소소를 뇌베세 그래 샘발로 초는 나버지 용비 내걸로 항상 초는 집어들이 genram에 제와제 아니 데데스 가네 산나도네 아니 디 제런로는 지그 말에 생이 동의지나 아니 가사 가서 센터도는 도버쇼 생이나게 로장이 들었다 개용 말이다 근데 콜해와 때도 큐온도 담아샤와지 창의지 차소나 아니 소속이 차기도 되면 거는 랭거비에지 차고로 와
So here now, whenever we come across with such conditions, the conditions of suffering, in other words, just try to examine that if I let myself influenced by such conditions, will it be okay or not? And just without panicking and becoming this, not letting this situation uncontrollable, and try to think very carefully and analyze very carefully. How do I really, handle, and in what manner that I can really handle such situations? And this kind of thinking process is really needed.
다들 렘바 오지 다 시원한 템바네 손도 손바 시원한 템바네 차보던 저와던 두보던 녀바네 시원한 지인라 이 동보송 말이 동보던 손베 주바나라 년세도 세자와나 델레숑이 동에 당도 렌지 뒤마이 비니 처원 추우던 자 자 띵원도 로마 띵원라 르퍼버 메샤오 손도 메시바오
So then here third, acceptance of suffering that is based on physical activities, which says, right? The four physical activities are moving around, standing, sitting, and laying down. When all day and all night you purify your mind of obstructions by means of the first moving around, and third sitting on this four, you are accepting the sufferings that arise from them. However, you do not relax on a couch, chair, or bed, or straw, or leaves when it is not the time to do so.
맞죠? 뒤진에 데려 로차 년도 이셔나나게 세대 다들 메시지 넣어라. 셔나 뒤지 간로지를 만들비 뒤지 예 말아. 당가서 가디에 뒤지 간로지를 넣으셔봐서네. 대 간로지 내가를 대대 바로.
So our day-to-day, the physical conduct is very much under the influence of such.
뒤 뭐쳐 되노를 맞죠? 지 차단패 생에도 그래서 뭐쳐 지 실로를 레베거를 야나 돈을 상담도 그거를 좀 뭐쳐 지를 참아도 용거래. 아니 지 로션 버스는 데다야 지 내신 버스에 대해서는 던전을 지르고 남 가서 노마 되는 게 내가 대체 그래. 인산 간제 된주기 시험나지 관계 트는 채나야. 근데 그 로기 봐 맞아 봐요. 밤에 마셔야지. 아니 봐 때문에 되게 지소나 아니 그 사람들 지체는 대토에 지지어라. 뒤진 가서 봐요. 가서 아니 로기 준비된 것에 시험나지 내가 송으로.
So this is, we should not let our physical activities go without introspection as a practitioners. It requires introspections. So don't let, your physical activities and act wins in such, mental hindrances and carelessness, in other words. But whenever we are, engaging in physical activities, so moving around, standing, sitting, and so on and so forth, we should do so with application of introspection.
나버도 된주기 딱 집어서 그래. 다 간지 년에들 집이 내거서라 생점이 내거서라 강에 쇼비 내거라 동에 당에 제거래. 얘나야 된주기지 저한테 대해서는 자다로만 된주 템바라 양아 치세로 전에 통증으로 들잖아. 만배시에서는 된주 제주여 말했어.
제 연계 수는 거 어디 딱딱
집바나는 세대 된주기 변에 차단을 슈점보 용비네가 델카디자비네가 생기 로장던데 제비네가라 강에 요나 거라 돈에 접어서 지지 야지 가서에나 자주보도 표준소가 쉬우마 대사이는 로사이는 자주보 쉬우 메요비 거라 아디 치세제나 다데도 지지 세게 저러 로기 뭔가 만비 제세게 저러 된주기 지지여 말해서도 근데 강에 같이 칩이 거라 연구를 생기지만 로기 다행스레는 말도 지 대다 지디 말해서지 but 치세제는 된지는 지금 말했어 존재다래.
So here now, whenever that's the suffering, that's condition is met, and one should ready to actually accept those situations or whatever the sufferings that may be, if one's activity is influenced by negative thoughts and emotions, and one should confront it. One should, try to apply attitude towards that, and to get rid of this negative influences. But then again, when it comes to, using that, as we find in the text itself, store or leaves and so forth. When you are in a little bit, when one is going through, our living conditions becomes, the living condition becomes a little bit, lower, in other words, and one should not get let go of it, or one should not think that one should not have an attitude of contemptuous attitude towards one's, one's lower livelihoods and so forth. The livelihood that is not really, luxurious. So those are the what really requires for us to think very carefully and to accept those.
맞죠? 이제 라네 슈도는 소소문에 소소 비다고도 소소 선바 자체뭐 소소 슈지게 자체 동년의 지형이나 아니 단다기 아니 니게 장하져와나 이게 저런 강에 니걸을 강에 체거래다 아니 니걸을 강에 체비거라 저런 게 동년대다 대시 제고래다 소에데 아니 단단 로장전에 선반은 다지전에 아니 생주 고쳐때 단단히 다지제고로 Mado Matana, the Jolo Mandrosona, and Gol do Jubaji Sona, and tell us about it said, and the Lojana Kunshi Kege Tegmarwa.
So this is how we should broaden our mind by practicing, by broadening one's mind, and then accepting the possibility of such sufferings that may occur in our life. Right from now, even though that such sufferings have not occurred, but one should accept mentally, and one should, anticipate such sufferings, maybe happens to me. When that happens, and then not just by anticipating and accepting those sufferings, but also when this comes, how do I withstand? How do I really, handle those sufferings? And it is right from now, we should broaden our mind by engaging in the practice of mind training and try to acquire those, what we call the mental armor that can be, one can be protected by such armors when one goes through such sufferings.
Another such a Koroma Transhermando, Chorangi Messendi Nola, D. Colin dead and dish shower, Kangin dead and the Chigre das, De Chibicola, and Chorangi dead and dish shower, Donachagores, Dotinitary.
In brief, what the Lam Rim suggests us is, look, in your lifetime, there's always possibility that such situation may occur. You may be in such situations. When you are in such situations, you should be ready to accept it.
The Chulatin, Chuyons Zimbala, Demba Nan Sondo. Conjusona Chuji in Russia Batan, Lamala Chuji in Russia Batan, Chuna Zoana, Jana Jachin Tumba, some de Cadenshawa Tan, Jibu Imba Nede, Yantaba Sembatan, Nenjo, Yila Shepe, Simbi Shilagamba de. Chun Zindu Deno, also the Chun Zimba Deno, the dollar Zambana, and Dongenjuma did under Lamba or Sondo. You choose the dates I shall not George.
So then it is both accepting of acceptance of suffering that is based on upholding the teachings. The teachings is upheld in 7 ways. By first worshiping and serving the three gurus. Second, worshiping and serving the gurus. Third, understanding the teachings. Fourth, teaching extensively to others what you have understood. Fifth, reciting its praises in a loud, clear voice. And sixth, correctly reflecting on its solitude. And seventh, cultivating meditative serenity and insight that is imbued with the yogic attentions. When you strive at this, you accept the suffering that arise.
Tangaso Churnyane, Ben content into content Japanese on the any Shalagi about the Gondru Nicola, any that Tela Tembi, Kangan, Donnet checkers, Moy or the Suyum Bicola, Chula Tembi, and the Donnet checkers, Donnet checkers at the liaison.
So this is how it actually, this actually teaches us the acceptance of the suffering that is based on upholding the teachings. So when we're engaging in the teachings, or when we're engaging in the practice, such as reciting mantras or chanting, or actually engaging in the practice of meditative serenity and reflecting on its solitude, in other words, vipassana, and all those practice. When one is going through such practice, there is a possibility of occurring some sufferings, and this particular paragraph actually teaches us how to handle those sufferings.
晚上我们去
10 minutes break.
지난 가서 되네 좋아지는 게 내가 다른 말 데스 마스 줘 아니 좋아지는 주세요 막 로시는 게 그런 가서 나와 되게 된저 타만 인자
Okay, sorry. I keep speaking without unmuting it. So, since given this is the last week of the month, and I will give a time for questions and answers, but then first let me read through a couple of paragraphs, and then I'll leave the questions and answer time.
네, 저도 저에는 되는 거니 저거도 찾아서 시간으로 네 추세도 된도 토마스 당연히 막 로웨다 대 쉬고 냥가스키면도 단 너무 좋아라 때문에 손 너무 좋아라 때문에 단지 이게 가서 제는 제야 그래 제 제도 제는 게 나바틴 사례 제도 너무 좋아라 때문에 도 짜다 카불라 소베 줌미 두반 냐슬람바다 그 제바탄 카도니바 냐슬람바다 제템비 쇼바 탄제레 다운에 네베 취진 샤와다 신라 소바 방데 젠라 님바 츠웨 젠라 라레 젠라 라레비 초아제나 님바나 소지 메셰베 지시 초이바데 젠라 추고라 소바 초와다 마zam바 쇼바 방베 마시바데 미인도바 나레 도바 셰바다 가다 셰소 방베 자오다 니도 도바다 촌보 조보 조라 소바다 강거 셰바 방베 셰 마시바데 미 가체네 도바테 노모알 소바 데노 데달라 데네 동엔종와 당도렘바 오 손도
So here now, fifth, accepting of suffering that is based on living by begging. The 7 aspects of living by begging are: the first, you experience having an ugly appearance due to shaving off your hair, beard, and so forth. You experience wearing clothes that is patched together, and it is of poor color. Third, you live by restraining yourself from the conduct of worldly person and etc. in a way other than they do. Fourth, you give up farm work, etc., and then live by getting material goods from others. So you live in dependence on others. Fifth, since you do not accumulate or employ material gain, you seek things such as robes, etc., from others for as long as you live. Sixth, since you give up sexual intercourse, you turn away from human desire until you die. And seventh, since you give up dancing, laughter, and the like, you turn away from human merriment until you die, in order to give up friends, intimate companions, childhood friends, and the like, as well as as well as pleasure and enjoyment. You accept the suffering come about based on this.
Tabu Kambojine Shana Sangi, Lobu Chula de Nyan Cheng, Gila, Jombicala de Kangi, the Done Jetugurela, Done Che Chigro. Mato Tanda dojing as a catcher, Katu de Lote, Don Modo Corona, Yanji Longa Chesona, Chomejos of the Twine.
So here now, if you really look at that and without having a proper understanding, it looks like that someone is having a insane behavior, right? This is how it looks like when we go through that. But however, it's not so. This is how the Kadamba practitioners can upheld such conduct of what they say about like, once you have relied your mind upon the Dharma, and doesn't matter where you live and what kind of livelihood that you may have, even if you have to, spend your entire life being solitude, in the cave, under rocks, trees, and so forth, you're able to do that. This is the fortitude that one needs to have as a practitioners. So therefore, it really talks about how to maintain contentment. That is all about. It is not something that we are just giving up all this and not having companions and giving them all the friends and behaving like an insane. That's not what we were talking about.
또 가서 제때 되게 또거도 되세 내면데 제가 지한라 땐 마실마도 라니라 지다 산이 제비 장달에 되는 사위에서 계속 되는 명예게 딱 거의 님이 바시 돈에 주년에 정해 지기 돈을 과들랜드마도 되게 과랭에 되는 말에 되게 라네 동에 대이 내가라 아니 대대시어 강의데 책을 대대시셔라 아니 동에데 당내 책을에서는 나도 소용 벌어.
So this is how it actually lays out, this kind of, experience that one may have. So one should prepare oneself to going through such experiences, So without having, a proper understanding of the faults of samsaric existence, or the quality of the samsaric existence, then one will not be able to have a proper contentment. Without having such contentments, then giving up those things are something that is very, very difficult, right? And so therefore, those are the practice actually, followed by the practice that are undertaken by the great practitioners who really follows the Vinaya. And for them, this is something that is really, really required. And for us, without seeing faults in this samsaric existence, the nature of samsaric existence, and then if we think about all this, giving up all the 7 kind of things, and this really makes no sense to us. But if you really have understood very carefully of the faults of samsaric existence, and giving up those things has become a contributory factor for one's own enhancement of one's own spiritual practice.
아리노레 치로로 콤바맹에 되는 리스타바 드리지를 동네 다네 제와라 코노길 야제로 개개메와 되게 냐네 코노기 리치 간세기 샹추선다 푸게 아니 지 조비 샹추선을 지라 아니 푸게 미데샤네 랑가는 조비 거기 동네 제거지 송거라 그런 견답지는 매와.
So here now, we're not, encouraging someone to become a homeless and give up everything and stand somewhere and beg and so forth. This is not what we were talking about. This is the practice, one voluntarily undertaking such practice, the practice of the bodhisattvas, the practice that is actually, undertaken by the great masters of the past, such as bodhisattvas and so on.
가당 로조도서 세거래 매진에 치제니 아니 치제니 비는 하지 터세에 고 미지기 배치 떠네 로 단체 지자는 로비네 거라 동네 제지로.
So here now, this is how the Kadampa practice. Kadampa practice always involve that there is an objective, why they are undergoing such practice, why they are undertaking such practices. There is a meaningful objective of engaging in such practices.
나 뭐바 쫌발은 두 라템바네 시데 다 맞아 랭크 컨트리 집변다 게이쇼라이나 존지 세그레 다 이제 템비 라네트네나 도리 세그레 근데 된지 집이가 타치바 용비네가라 아니 가르네 돈에 제그레 소에 대시 주바데.
That's next it talks about acceptance of suffering that is based on fatigue due to presence, due to perseverance here in Jautavas, due to perseverance.
뭐바 쫌비 두알라 템바 네 손도 게쇼라 쫌바나 류 가사 류당 센지 동아 추바와 녜비 젤레쇼이 동네나 당들렘바 오손 안테마스메도.
So you accept the suffering that arises from the mental and physical fatigue, hardships, and disturbance, while you are persevering at cultivating virtues.
다들 세보세장로 당가소이 对마소이네 다들 최년년의 제선에 다나 마소도 최년년에 하루지로 되는 내가 차지 나거를 선불 통치를 가리에나 봐 줄루 초초도 지어로 된제 내가서는 돈에 간데 제거래서 다나 마소이 내가서라 아니지 라니에 니마 니자 추지에는 계정소로 다시 준비가라 내 강이 간데 채소나 아니 될라 돈에 간데 제거래서 카도 소소하게 안에도 전화 지기로 최선의 신앙다 다음에 또 보다 상주 생활이 연주지어서 이게 자체선의 신앙 안디는 것은 돈에 같이 제거를 소해대로.
So this is what actually happens to us when we are engaging in such practices. The suffering that arises from the mental and physical fatigues, hardships, and disturbance. And while one is actually persevering at cultivating virtue, this is something that happens to us. And so here is now which this particular paragraph actually suggests us. It suggests us how to accept suffering that actually occurs, based on the fatigue due to perseverance and so forth.
다 듬바 신체 된 셰발라 템바네 손도 된 지지샤와레 된 샤와 지지데 델레 동행종 당들렘바 오 손도.
So then he says, accepting of sufferings that is based on acting for the welfare of living beings. There are 11 activities for others' welfare, and you accept the sufferings that occurs because of this.
신체 된지게 단도 된샤와 주지세데 가서 가서 강는 티 카니스로 자래. 단다 지로모지게니 신체 된지데 크외 아니 상사이 리우는이나 상사 추진지 리우는 시에 내게 받다 다와샤스게 된주지데 가서 게 정확히 저서 되는 가지 된지게 거라 아니 강에 최바데 인 돈에 가지 제고를 소야게.
So accepting suffering here now, that it's accepting suffering that based on acting the welfare of living beings. There are 11 activities for others' welfare. So 11 activities that we have gone through, individually during my previous teachings, long time ago. It is actually so. The Lam Rim actually refers that if you want to know that 11 activities, and the Lama Tsongkhapa stated that you should look at the text called Jiangsa, which is the Bodhisattva's Bhumi.
다 체제 샤와라 템바네 손도 모제도 추고라 추고지 레라 소고 로드 슝와다 카나마도와 메비 신레다 손다 제보라 셴셰초와라 소비 신지 체제 샤와데 대달레 슝이 동에 당도네 오 손도 대다지 이제레 슝이 동에 가요 중화 태장 수수 준비지 메동신 상추는 주바 슈네 도비 케스 민조와 이 메가와 멤버 주보고 송 된디들
Accepting suffering that is based on current tax, you accept the suffering that arises from the tax for renunciate, such as the work as associated with the begging bowls, ropes, and so forth, or from the tax for a householder, such as faultless work on a farm and business as a government employee, etc. Even if you are stricken with any of the sufferings that arise in dependence on this eight bases, you do not give up your joyous perseverance at each. You act for the sake of enlightenment, joyfully not letting such sufferings become an obstacle that cause you to turn back once have set foot.
다시 뒤강이 동해 제보들 체제제 간주치 좋아해나 나는 맞아 내가 카톡 게시생에나 네 라네토는 용의 제스지 쇼발에 푸이 미유텔 제스 다 조비 상제지 고바 탑이 치에도 네 랑가를 전에 용심이 내가 강에 제비거라 동네체 아니 전주도 shum바 담마샤 아니 동해 코로나 장어들도 빠숑데 수소매고 조마샤 미디 토라 인주바 제슈소에 데려왔다.
So here now, when one is persevering, cultivating virtue. So persevering or cultivating virtue is that we persevere on the spiritual path to gain complete state of enlightenment, and we are having such a genuine motivation. So I must work for the welfare of other sentient, gain state of enlightenment for the welfare of other sentient beings. This is a body motive, the bodhicitta motive that we cultivate. So when you have such, and then whatever those eight, sufferings that may come across, and it will not be hard for us to actually overcome.
대다 지질의 중에 동해 소소 간대지 요나야 동해기 태장 동해의 라니로 토도 버장 아니 소소기 전리대 예 땅마샤와체 네 상출은 슈비 란데 도비 게스 만도와체 아니 이딱 가와다 뽑았다 딘지기 되어는 주고 제시소에 되래.
So then here it says, like, even if you are stricken with any of the sufferings that we talked about earlier, any of the sufferings that arise in dependence on this eight bases, right? You do not give up your joyous perseverance at each. In fact, it says, you act for the sake of enlightenment, joyfully, not letting such sufferings become an obstacles that cause you to turn back once you have set forth.
다 조선을 좋아 가서도 있다. 좋아면은 얘들 인간적인 가서 저거도 찾고 쇼기처럼 쇼레지처럼.
Let's see how many questions that you have. If you do not have questions, then I will continue on teachings and try to finish this. The perfection of patience, the chapter of perfection of patience.
Rinpoche, what if in your practice physical discomfort isn't so much of a distraction that you cannot focus on your objects of meditation? So, for example, sitting for a very long time, discomfort in your legs, hips, or whatever, and it becomes you're no longer concentrating on your meditation or your practice, you're concentrating on the pain.
Yeah. That you sometimes you so in your lens you copy yes. Check then home get copy. And check yeah so me they won't get any so come net me to matter with was so woman and check my check him check my data in a ya kangbana che to che de galia and so gomde ya net member chungu mendos and gomje yuli ya lo mikte chik bad corsorated mikte ka ka shows tinde jungbe kablia and on a kind of shows tabsha career setup
didn't never chimney, never chim seguro, not in the Munechi, compete our chevina, Kasek to Tonta, Tanka kind of ma. You say never the combat Uzujan data, Neparuchilla, any Jilune, Nipatan Junior Madonna Yoda, in Chimichi, to search Bomazoache, Nikamanga, Kamanga, come up the call me, but the money Sechil, me by the Chijoena, Color Haniton, a Jato, me by Che, Yan to Yan me but the better the Jamolo. And it is what parts of Kamajan, not see you on the legend. Any got they can count. Now she gets me but somebody constitution, whatever we call me, but the day will be cheaper than your money.
So for this, let's say, try to shorten our session, a meditation session. So one should not have a long meditation sessions. So this, problem we may experience such problems of both physical and mental fatigue, which really becomes an obstacle for one's meditation. And, this can be, this can actually divert your focus. So therefore, for us as an initial practitioner, it is ideal to break our session into a very short sessions, and then try to make it more numbers, but short sessions, and not trying putting yourself a lot of hardships and taking a lot of hardships and having a long period of time. The long sessions, that is not suggested for us. It doesn't really necessary for us to try to live, to meditate as long as possible. That is not what is required. So what is required is to try one's best to really to focus on object of one's meditations as much as one can, even if you can take a couple of minutes or 5 minutes, and then try to, the way when you are in this meditative session, and you should have this complete focus on the object of meditation. and it
Oh,
yeah, when any chick lu give it chose to earlier than they can get your must be but to Sajini Maya.
oh, Tendrich, and a Lucian Benal, Tendrick said the Lebu color, Lucian Jan here. Yena, Tata Soso let Tombo and the Ganjo and a Kamachu, Tombo, Gamacho going and Kamachu Degans and a Pembaton. Kamachu Pembaton, the Kamachu Debu color, Mina, what they hear now, Uzujan meted in Medevaje, Taran Kamachi, Conal, and Silonio, and Gemolo, and there's Cheshawayana, and Gemma Juet, Tona Legua. Kamachi Degan Sala, Kala, Tom Machetas and a Kamachi Jama Deshadi, Tonchia de Jashadi, and Gemma de Junior Moro Charuda.
So here, at the moment, we as initial practitioners, the physical and mental, fatigues is bound to happen. So therefore, unlike those, great practitioners who actually achieved, mental serenity or the calm abiding, who actually gained the realization of calm abiding in a special insight by, and also the mental and physical appliances or the suppleness where you become where you will never be tired both mentally and physically. So once you have gained the mental and physical suppleness. And so your body will always towards, accumulation of virtue, and with joyfully, you will always put into the practice of accumulation of virtue and so forth when one has gained this mental and physical suppleness. However, as we talked earlier, we as initial practitioners, we do not have such, realizations at this point. So therefore, we should try to, cultivate motivations prior to one's actual meditations, that I will engage in my meditative practice, meditation sessions without any disturbance for at least 5 or 10 minutes. And as then you then begin to engage in the practice of meditations as you're motivated, and then try to break those, the sessions in a very short session. Try to break the very short sessions instead of having one very long session that makes us very tired and so forth.
Subola Kundritan, Sambala Kundritan, and this Sambala Tonanda, Tawane.
So for us, it is very important that, even if you are able to maintain or to sustain your meditation session longer than you have motivated, but you should always try to, get out of that meditation sessions as you motivated. For instance, let's say that you want to meditate for 10 minutes, and you go through that, and even after 10 minutes, you feel very, you feel very, you are into the meditation. You still want to continue it, but for us as a practitioner, initial practitioner, you shouldn't do that. We should come out of that meditation sessions, because with this, what will happen is it will actually encourage you to continue your meditation session from after the break. So this will increase your joyous perseverance of engaging in the practice of meditations. And so here, for us, it is, we are prone to have, mental and physical fatigue. When we are actually engaging in such practice of meditations, if you sustain long period of time, this will really become exhausted, and then your practice interest of engaging in practice of meditation will be no longer there. So it will be, disappear. So which is not good for us.
Don't nga so chidai na tisonge tisela da kashi yin da manda lo da kambajan me je kala sana me je set lo do ngone samba debut to bi tanda me pa sechi de ne tanda la konai ma tong bi tanda de je da kare ne che chu go je na ya so so ra gi ba tande je ne pe cha na so ba na gi ge le na na gi chu de de kro ra gi to na en tande je ne ya te ska ma kahi de ne ya mo ri te so na de lo ba li zu ba kro la ya zubit ne ta gi zang gi do tong ji je ne na pen to ndo a.
So forgot like my early translation, which also mentioned that, just try to do it. Like, for instance, if for 10 minutes, I will meditate and I will focus on meditating on the cycle of breathing for 10 minutes, for instance. And the like, you can choose whatever the kind of meditation that really, something that is, something that is comfortable for you, and you can just, focus on those meditation for a short period of time. So here now, in order to establish a single pointed mind, we have all kinds of meditations, right? There's walking meditation, sitting meditation, breathing meditation, so on and so forth. All of those meditations are there. However, with some time, it has the blessings, and also it has a great meanings if one can maintain those 7 postures of the Vairocana when one is engaging in meditation. Even if it's for a short period of time, it is very beneficial.
Oh yeah, honestly.
So, other questions?
I have a topic I'd like to raise. I don't know if it's a question. I was quite struck at the beginning when Rinpoche said, sometimes you just won't understand. And Rinpoche is such an excellent teacher. He does explain things so well. But there are times in the text where I don't know anything. It just completely escapes me. I can't get any cognitive handle on it. So in those times, I say to myself, I do not understand this in this life, but I am receiving the transmission from my teacher, and it is going into my continuum. And in a future life, I hope I will be able to understand this.
다 편설라 권나서야 내 야부 고마송다 내 이 권변데 뭐 게디 야부 고마송 편설라 권나서 다 뭐디 당 고대발이야 고하고 쇼지도 단다 고야 하고래샤 아니 마음발이야 세치면 남서 단다 다직 단다 갑리야 생이다 덴베 개겐 딘데 자네 아니 소소 최니에 고가 브라우 되게 바제 겐게 안 세치면 남서 아니 소소 냠레 제알이야 딘데 최다 딘데 데더베 아니 직 생이다 데베 개겐다 투야게 아니 간다지 바셔를 사미원 사이를 딘데시 두모데나 곤마야 하고 가고도 라야다 딘데시 고도 데 딘데이나
되게
이게 야고 뭐게 양이 고마송 딘데데 빈절라 간르지
다라를 네 딘데지 고서 레베스 파티다 야야 페제 더블 이나 코로텔라데 테 자체 자레 배당 가서 기계 천이다 되면서 생이 뭐저데 공부되야로 생이 바차사야로 바차사서는 생이 또는 바차세세게 되고 무비네시레마도 추적이 타네스게 말어와 주연은 저번 중앙에 천이 있잖아요. 되는 자체 자 용을 해서라다.
So it is really true, because even though that when we are met with a very qualified and authentic teacher, and it may not able to have a complete understanding of whatever the teacher is actually teaching. And what benefit that we may have out of listening to such teachings, although that we may not be able to comprehend whatever the teacher is teaching, but you will be able to implant the potency in your mind. And implanting potency or the imprints is something that is very, very important. It is not just implanting potency or the imprints. It's not something that is a religious belief, but this is true, because once you have already implanted the potency or the imprints within one's continuum, and there is a time at some point, such imprints will manifest and will then will then become aware of all the teachings and able to apprehend or to comprehend all the teachings that are given by the previous teachers. This will happen. Yeah. So here, one should listen to the teachings with joyful perseverance, and think that it is such a wonderful opportunity, and how fortunate it is for me to be able to listen to such profound and vast teachings. We should always put an effort to enhance and develop our joyous perseverance for engaging in practice and learning. So this is how all those great teachers would always advise us. Don't just become a fanatic and give up. Try to enhance and develop your joyous perseverance to practice and listen to the teachings. So then also it is also good to analyze ourselves when think about that. It is really something that I do not understand, or maybe there is something wrong with something else that is other than myself. You should always analyze that. It is if it is it is good to analyze that why this is happening to me. This is guarding into So any other questions? Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, this question is, I have encountered a Dharma practitioner who lives in a small country with very limited Buddhist responses, and that person has taken classes at Nalanda, and he wants to study the Lam Rim, and he's looking at different ways of doing that. He's got the books, and I have two questions. I've already encourage them to look you up, online and so forth, looking at the previous teachings. So the first question is, would it be okay to invite him to join us if it came to that? First question. Second question, we're already far ahead, far advanced. We're in the we're in the person of great capacity. Would it be useful if he so chose to attend here?
Tenalia and Koran Chidan Lam Rim Tindelia Lam Rim Songje of Nia, the Kovaret as Jung of Das and Yamadeva.
응.
In Koron Chik Yamlera Chigwist in the Lagudos, in the Chik Koron Chedan, the test Mararastos, in the Moet and the so Yamek, the Gigan, Lam Rim Chik Chip Chicken to be Gigan, Sensident in Dake, and a Chik Song de Zolia, Delia, Donaje Locris, and so Lam Rim Chabia Koron Page those Lam Rim Page to my lodge, those Chevers, those more in the Lagu Josa. The Imbineda Morasamba, the Chijina Yang, Yanjina Mo Kora Yang, and today, Rumjaki, the Sonja Navekavia, Dina Sholam, the Tiku in our containers, the more distant Garsona, Tanganzuya, gave it away Lungin, gave it away Lungin Namshalia, Karoya Let's Abrabas, and Koya Gunne Mez and Kandayung as the Diparachi, shows Lav Shavina, Yan Kandashung as the direction.
네, 네, 요 쇼로는 메디가 기계 말 가서는 어떻게 변한 인생에는 저비 패야다 저비 콘트리님이다 저비 패야시 바래니 내가 동보시에서는 진비 패야 지금 가서 세니님이 시버리 니바들 추정이 패야다 님이 시어디 파시라라게 패야다 님이 시비 거라 지하르에 신로 기계 말 수수 카톡이 고고영이 짱짱지마도 전다도 맞는 오늘 치에는 건을 해서는 말해 나래 수용소나 카투라 니마니마 고아코라 로아 수르질 해와 있는 니마니마를 고아테 다가라라 그래 펜토 다가라요 어고
So it is okay for him, it's okay for you to invite him to the teachings. That's fine. Because it's not something that he's missing. Are you going there? Can you hear me? Is that okay?
Yeah,
Can you hear me okay? Okay. So because here at this point, for instance, we are on the chapter of patience and the perfection of patience. We're talking about how to find a faults in anger and how important it is for us to practice patience. Similarly, we have gone through how to practice generosity and how to find the faults in stinginess and so forth, miserliness or stinginess and so forth. And similarly, we have gone through the teachings on the practice of second perfection of morality, and how important it is for us to cultivate morality and so on and so forth. So, he can always come and join, and each chapter teaches, has a unique teachings that is beneficial for each and every individual. So it is not something that he's missing others and he will not be able to understand this. This is not what's going to happen. So you can invite him, and it is okay to invite him to the teachings. That's fine.
렌체 강을 해서는 렌체 카도 되라 이제나 오마 집이 촌하면도 변에 집이 패한다 집이 장례시인데 다가랑 리그리마도 내 가마도 고마서 세케면도 사제르제 놀로 고아 다가랑네.
So I also feel that there are many who have a similar feelings that well, I wanted to go to the teachings, but then the teachings have already gone so far and I'm way behind, so it may be not beneficial for me to participate in receiving the teachings. This is when I just feel that is happening with many people. But however, it's not so. You can just come and listen to the teachings. For instance, when someone has not been able to attend the previous teachings, but who is able to attend the teachings, receiving the teachings on the practice of generosity, then it actually teaches how to be generous. What is the perfection of generosity? And why it is important to engage in practice of generosity. And similarly, it has its own specific teachings that is suited for each and every individual. So we can always, let them come, and if they wanted to, receive the teachings, it's fine.
최소는 것이 같은 여는 제가 찔려나라 소소를 계속 열어서 개체가 말했으나 나나 야보여래.
In fact, it
저기
is,
추기 개체서 개마로인데 이게 뭔지가 된가서 대시 제발진의 시그레마도 정으로 지지송도로 줄루 코로이 줄루를 급이 된다라 이 최소고 매송도 때 자체 자리 때 거야스 개마로 이거
So-
비내지다 팀비거는 제가 찔려나라 소소 계속로
so it is really beneficial, if anyone who would like to come and attend the teachings, even in one session of teachings, it's very, very beneficial. Well, we are not just, trying to, call more people, invite more people, and, to convert into Buddhist practitioner. This is not what we are doing. This is what His Holiness always said that, we should always try to teach people, in accordance with the reality. That is what we were teaching. Since we are teaching the reality, and reality, in order to understand the reality, it requires a lot of analysis. And once you have gone through a lot of analysis, and then that doesn't really tells you that you have to believe and you have to have faith and you have to have so on and so forth. This is not what we were suggesting here. Anyone who can just come to the teachings, participate in teachings, it is always beneficial.
안돼. 맞아 나르세데 레트시치를 빼자고로. 쇼지는 되나 쇼 강가 university. 시비가로 강가 제바시 통해진소나 쇼 간내시에서나 연수도바 시에 거기서는 지래 내용. 치료스케야만. 쇼지는 되나 저지 참설해요.
So it's just like sometimes the teachers, the master would, set a very beautiful example of the Lam Rim teachings. That's the Lam Rim teaching is just like if you are pulling a tablecloth from the one end, if you pull the tablecloth from the one end, then all the tablecloths will fall off, and you will be able to get it. Similarly, if you listen to the teachings of the one part of the Lam Rim Chenmo, you may be able to get the essence of entire teachings of the Lam Rim. So it is always good to participate in it.
야야 아니 당가서 되게 대자위. 당가서 대정호하지 아니 뒤손도 사비 겨와나 쇼지도 담비 털라테네 세브로 다 된저게 이드 자세지시 예동이 자세지시 바냐서래네 조베 산제지 고반요안인데 타바 지장의 샤베이 시에니마야 되나 주베 나마나지 신절로도 소서네 모아다 모아제다.
So let's do our dedications. By means of receiving these teachings and engaging in the practice, whatever the virtue that I may have accumulated by myself and that of all other beings such as Buddhas and Bodhisattvas of the 3 times, and may all those virtues, accumulation of virtues, become a cause for complete enlightenment as soon as possible for myself and all other sentient beings. May all the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas please bless me to be able to do this.
Loge jini sabi gewa de don rowa gelo gombe don chebo juzu lo son chobo ebe ni bo ren do se je shu sa je me je ju je me do do re ro ni je ne de je bo de Sanje shendo mene bewa Doge nanda shena shebo shu Chewa kundo yanda lama Jeme cheje bela nanshe Sada nanje yende razo Doje change gomo nyendo shu Yedang guru ran Mende lagane Daya mi dene rindu bene sonye Kada yamba kaje sabande Lomi mari kelo rowa no 南真教育红波道九级，天马四边塞罗更多样，江北扬州在月接所呢，天边人马更苍南九九，年年准备接那年新手，让给姐姐多别南九呢，修长在月正月同给姐。若月一九面包三千年，家园电报有人真久见，电报人间说给马家母，乔家娘报就被说的呢，研究千个也让就把也，偏偏的是我先把手，在天教育面中成了呢。列住相求难救人别中，谈得难救一乱别的心。家园在报人多穷究竟，老上主编天前主先进，眼见世界莫当人民根，才让更多家园好报应。浪荡着我忙究竟。刚才的把住了去世间，最近住了尊把地月子，土地南就大都住些间，抓些将士手，要就接，就是那名国菜老点间，南国城的手指接把弄，老上天边这面上松间。若也面色大多年久见，刚着让人过健康做偏当的话，马的久远，现在在我点子叫作业，小白心天不练就见，刚着让人翻江边抱怨接到前不动。更多扫墓天阳天见的，天道根基结束道路去，夜晚的大堂街路多么，就从西边叫我到街，我光了就多我不的。老人给人早晚的跟讲，从不是老多我呢。哎呀，多谢，thank you。